All right. Well, let me just preface it with saying this is not a fashion statement here. This is poison ivy. So Melissa suggested I get a scarf, and I do not have a scarf. Isn't it the new trend? No, I'm just trying to heal. So that's what that is. But other than that, we are here, and I'm so excited to be here with you. I get the honor tonight of sharing my story of how I got into DIQ. It really is more like how DIQ came to me, because as you will see, as I talk more, not much of my story really has much to do with my actions at all. So I'll start from the beginning. DIQ came to me first because Mary Kay came to me. I had never heard of Mary Kay before. Melissa came to my dorm room on January 16th for a facial. Before that moment, I was just a normal sophomore college student, loving the college life because of the freedom it brought me, but also painfully aware of how little money I had and how little power I had to make it. I had gotten my first job right after high school graduation working at, can anyone guess? You won't guess. Home Depot, of all places, in customer service. And I remembered working all summer long in that job, standing on my feet, trying to stay positive, but often watching the minutes and hours tick by. By the end of the summer, I had tallied up all that I had made, and it was a little over $5,000. Not bad for a first job, but I remember thinking, that's it? Couldn't I have made more? But there was no way I could. My wage was fixed, and I was only allowed to work so many hours. I discovered that I was only allowed to work so many hours because I found out about time and a half pay, and so I would try to stretch out my shifts, and then they started cutting my hours because of that. So I really kind of kept bumping up against that time restraint there. Home Depot was a job I got because I just needed the paycheck. And the next few summers, I worked as a nanny and preschool teacher because I had fallen in love with the art of caring and teaching kids. Those jobs didn't pay very much compared to the other jobs my peers were taking, and I remember being frustrated by how I had to choose between doing what I loved or making money. I didn't know it at the time, but what I had discovered through my first few jobs in college was that I didn't like someone else dictating how much I could make. If I wanted to make more money, I either had to work more hours or get more experience. And it was a painfully slow trade-off, if you ask me. I wanted to be paid for the value I brought to others, but at the time, I didn't see a way that could be possible. Enter Mary Kay. At that first appointment, I saw how generous the company was, how high quality and effective the products were, and how much consultants were making. I figured I might as well give it a try. So I did the most spontaneous thing in my life, and 2 days after my first appointment, I signed on as an independent Mary Kay beauty consultant. I was excited and hopeful, and I got the pretty welcome box with my starter kit, and then my inventory came, and I was all set up. And then I quickly became terrified. Many of you can maybe relate. I kept wondering, did I just invest in a scam? Everything just seemed too good to be true. Could I really make money with this? I had a year to figure it out, so I kept going. And within my first few months of business, I made 4 times more than I ever thought I could make. And then in one day, I sold over $500. And I knew then that this was not a scam. There was real money to be made here. And the products, they just kind of sold themselves. All I had to do was be brave enough to ask people 3 questions. Did you have fun? How does your face feel? And what would you like to take home with you today? Over and over, I was surprised by the people who bought from me and how much they bought from me too. Fast forward a few months, and seminar was just around the corner. Melissa encouraged me to go, but I saw no way that I could. A broke college student like myself doesn't just jet set to Dallas. Little peek into my life, I remember refusing to order books for class because they were more than $10. That's the life I was living. But Melissa insisted that I go, and she shared the value of the trip and what it could mean for my business and future. I said I'd pray about it, and I did. On June 1st, I remember sitting on a lake dock in Minnesota, praying, Lord, if you want me to go to Dallas in July, you're going to have to make it happen. That day, I received a text from a friend asking me how she can sign up to become a consultant. With this as confirmation, I worked my business in the month of May and June, holding facials and asking those 3 brave questions. Did you have fun? How does your face feel? What would you like to take home with you today? By the time seminar rolled around, I was able to pay for my trip with only Mary Kay money. And I was the senior consultant, so it was pretty fun. Many of you know the magic of seminar, so I will trust it'll be suffice to say my eyes were opened. I saw the beautiful women around me, smiling, happy to be there, visionaries and dreamers, movers and shakers, high caliber people who were going places. And more, they loved Jesus. The women I listened to at seminar knew that God had created them with unique gifts and talents and interests, that he had placed them on this earth to serve other people and showcase the image of God to others. They knew that Christ had lived and bled and died and rose back to life for them so that they could be free to live an abundant eternal life on mission. And because they knew all this, they were working their businesses to be as impactful and as free as possible. Free to serve others and to be present for their families. I was mesmerized. What do I have to do to be around more people like this? I asked myself. What would it take to have the freedom to influence these people like these women do? The answer? Become a director. Like a little apple seed, the thought was planted in my heart. After that, things became more colorful as I began to experience life with a view for potential rather than reality. After all, any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed. I was beginning to see and think how God did. A freeing thought, of course, but not without its challenges and attacks. The attacks started, as they often do, with a lie. I was a busy college student. I was going to school to become a teacher and not to sell skincare. I forgot to mention I'm studying elementary education in college. I was a teacher, not a consultant. I couldn't possibly do both. I didn't have enough time. And last January, all these lies kept coming to the point where I almost quit because I couldn't see how it could work with school. I held on though. Do you guys know why? I was having too much fun. I loved being able to be girly, and I loved the pink and the glamour, and I decided that I would stay for the people and the events, even if I didn't ever move up in the company. Don't ever underestimate the power of fun in a woman's life. There's a reason we get the song, Girls Just Like to Have Fun. Okay? It's true. That was grace enough that I needed to get me to march in Bowling Green, where I was finally able to get that lie uprooted from my heart. Melissa had invited me to go and had said it was for leaders. She told me that she saw me as a director and wanted me to come. Flattered beyond belief, I went. I felt like a total fraud while there. There I sat among directors and DIQs and red jackets, listening to conversations about legacy and influence and a career in Mary Kay, all the while having no idea if I could even continue in Mary Kay. There, Julia Burnett talked about limiting beliefs and led us through an exercise where we wrote down what we were believing. I wrote, I'm just a student. I'm a teacher, not a director. Now, out in the open, etched on paper, I was able to actually look at what I had been believing, and it became so nonsensical to me. Yes, I was in school to become a teacher, but all that year I had had my grievances with teaching too. So much so that I was happy to receive my degree in education, but didn't mind one bit if I never actually taught in school. And yet, for some reason, I was terrified of a future with Mary Kay if it didn't work out. Let me repeat that. Shay, the girl who was spending thousands and thousands of dollars and hours upon hours to get a degree in education, was completely at peace with never using her degree beyond someday teaching her own children. That same girl, who was spending far less time and money on her Mary Kay business, considered everything a waste if she never became a sales director. As for that belief that I could never live as both a teacher and consultant, my life had already proved that to be a lie. I had been a teacher and a consultant for over a year at that point. I left that event saying, Lord, I don't know why I'm so scared of Mary Kay, and I'm still not sure if I can become a director. But what I do know is that I cannot leave this company. You have me here, and I don't know why. I'm willing to find out, though. Lord, I don't know why, but I'm willing to find out. That became my prayer. With lies exposed and armed with new assurance I hadn't had before, I set out once more, excited, energized, clear, focused, highly motivated, and I was determined to grow my business. After all, it had to be important if I was facing so much doubt. I threw myself into work because, doggone it, I was going to grow my business. What followed was complete disaster. I lost my senior consultant status. I held a party that lost me $400 due to a customer's credit card fraud, and I barely made it to seminar that year, at which I was antsy the whole time because I now knew what it took to get on that stage, and I was not on that stage. What I discovered looking back at that time was that though I had been called and appointed, I was now disappointed because I was leaning wrong. I was going to grow my business, and it was going to be amazing. For God's glory, of course. But for God's glory quickly becomes an empty phrase when we act without God's power. I had become the equivalent of a child opening up a caterpillar's chrysalis every few days to see if it was turning into a butterfly, and then packing some fertilizer into the crevices when it wasn't. It took a lot of pain and frustration to learn that I couldn't manufacture my own miracles. You can imagine the freedom I experienced then when I discovered the solution to the now sliced up chrysalis I called my life. I was on my way back to school to start fall semester of my senior year this past fall. I knew I was on the verge of the next stage of life, but I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life. I remember feeling so off balance, never knowing what to focus on, prioritize, or plan for. My thoughts spun until finally, in one moment of clarity, I unearthed the treasured phrase, "God, what do you have to say about this?" In a moment of exhaustion and surrender, I decided that every day would be dictated by that question. Prayer became my multi-tool then. Through prayer, I had access to my map, flashlight, charger, and shield through life. I've never walked with God so closely. All of a sudden, this business wasn't so hard. I quickly regained my senior consultant status, and then in 1 month, I was doubly promoted to red jacket and then team leader. And my team came with 2 team members, not only active, but qualified. That was a pretty sweet commission check that month. It was as if God was saying, see what you can accomplish when you stop working yourself. To take the imagery from Max Lucado, I was like an apprentice to a master artist. The master artist took my hands and moved them about the canvas. "You're too stiff," he said. "You catch a glimpse of what to do and you try to paint it yourself. Let me move you and see what we create." What God created was a team of 6 active team members by December. I was headed to DIQ by Christmas. Now, before I continue with my story, I need to recap the lessons I've learned up to this moment and add in one word of caution. At this point, I had been a consultant for almost 2 years. I had experienced some moments of victory and many moments of seeming fruitlessness. I truly do believe what enabled me to experience breakthrough in my business was surrender to God. I allowed him to be the engine for strength and the wheel for guidance, and what he did was incredible. However, I have to declare this with a caveat. God cannot be manipulated into giving you the results you may seek. If I were in your seats listening to my own message, I would be tempted to think, okay, Shay says that the moment she gave up control, things started working out. God, I give up control. It's the equivalent of single ladies who hear married women say, "I found my man when I stopped looking for him." I'm still waiting for that one to work out here. Here's the problem with that mindset. If you are still the one in control. If you are only giving up control so that you get what you want. If you get what you want, you could be inclined to think your actions were what made it happen. Who gets the glory then? You or God? At Fall Advance in October, the month that I had jumped to 5 active team members, I sat down with God and asked him to show me why my life panned out the way it did. His reply was a torrent of verses. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. I came so that you would have abundant, eternal life. I am your Father who loves you and who delights over you with singing. I am more committed to your joy than you are committed to your joy." All those months ago, when I was striving with everything in me to achieve the results I wanted, if I had become a red jacket, sorry, my eyes are getting blurry here. If I had become a red jacket or a DIQ then, I would have thought that I was the one who had made it happen. And you know what that would have meant? I would also have to be the one to keep it and to grow it. But God was trying to show me, my daughter, That is a weight that I didn't want you to bear. It would not have led to your joy. That pressure would have crushed you. True surrender, sorry, I literally cannot see. True surrender looks like saying, God, I am leaning into the reality that I am your precious daughter to whom you only give your best. You know what I want and why I want it. And I leave those desires up to your care and discretion. If my desires align with your best, I trust that you will make a way. And if they do not, it is no loss to me that I do not have them. Your move, God. By leaving the decisions and results up to God, I finally experienced relief and joy, but only in proportion to the memory of the burden I used to carry when I worked all on my own. My joy is complete now because I sat all those years with the frustrations of my striving and the confusion of finding my own way. And I realized it is so much better to let God carry the load and just follow in his footprints like a child behind her daddy in the snow. Would I have the joy I have now if I didn't go through that pain? I don't think so. See, God has a purpose for everything. We cannot forget that he works all things for our good. Amen. Now, with that in mind, let me resume my story. It is now December. I have 6 lovely girls on my team, and I only need 2 more to start 2025 in DIQ. I really think it's going to happen. I feel God urging me to press on to the finish. And then it doesn't happen. In fact, not only do I miss DIQ in December, 3 of my team members go inactive in January. I'm back down from team leader to team builder. January comes quietly, and I'm left once more disappointed, disillusioned, and overall just confused. I really thought God was going to make me a DIQ. What did I do wrong? It's a common response to disappointment, really. Either you have really blown it, or God is holding out on you. Maybe you have thought these things as well. When you are not where you want to be, not what you want to be. When things turn south, when you get hurt, when that girl you really thought would say yes tells you no. Where does your mind go? I'm just blowing it. I'm just not cut out to be a consultant or a leader. Or maybe God is just holding out on me. He offers good things to other people, but not to me. He's waiting on me to get my act together, but he won't help me do that. He's too lofty to deal personally with me. I held many of those thoughts. And for me, it took getting sick to get me alone and quiet enough to have my eyes open to the truth. And what was that truth? That this wasn't just a business setback. This was a battle. In the quiet of my bed, while I was faint and stuffy, I turned to scripture and to wise counselors and finally saw that from the beginning of time, we have been at war. The pages of scriptures are practically tapestried with war. Our first enemy was in the garden, and he's had us in his crosshairs ever since. There was war in Exodus, war into the promised land, war to keep the promised land, war in heaven among the angels, war on earth against the Son of Man. War is everywhere, and we are not exempt from it. I don't think God told us to put on the full armor of God so that we could play dress up. Our adversary prowls around like a roaring lion, ready to kill, steal, and destroy. And yet we act so surprised when he does just that. I do not have time to tell you all the lies and attacks to my identity and purpose that were exposed that chilly month of January. But what I can say is that opposition is not a sign to stop. It may very well be the sign you need to realize that you hold something worth pressing on for. I believe I was at war in the month of December, but I gave up the fight too early. I got one too many no's and decided it just wasn't for me this round. I don't know all that I lost in that moment of surrender, but I don't want to ever be in that place of helplessness again. Now, before I get too fiery with that, I must remember that mercies are new every morning. We never have to play catch up in this life. Once again, God works all things for good, and I now know that I needed that disappointment in December and the disillusionment in January to wake me up to the reality of my situation. This is so much more than a pink jacket or a red jacket. God was raising me to become a leader, and a good leader has to go through some stuff to be able to have the strength and wisdom to pave the way for others. I believe God confirmed this in February by bringing me my team member, Ava, who is a breath of fresh air. She does not get discouraged easily. She is so teachable and came in ready as a qualified consultant. Then came a phone call from a woman at my church who said her sister-in-law was wanting to become a personal use consultant, so she thought of me because you're really working it. Then came a phone call with Maddie, my other powerhouse consultant, who was discouraged and needed prayer for her business. We prayed, and that night the floodgates opened. I can't remember the exact number, but I think she had sold over $700 within 24 hours. So much happening in 1 month, and in ways that only God can take credit for. Now, this is pretty lofty talk, so let me bring it down to the practicality of Mary Kay, the business for a moment, and back to the purpose of this training in the first place. How did I end up in DIQ? I've already established that there was a lot of hard work that needed to happen before I was ready to assume this position. But hand in hand with this came the needed realization that I needed this business as well. Not just, it would be nice to become a director. No, I needed to become a director. I'll spare you the details, but through a variety of experiences this semester in teaching and in ministry and in conversations with others, it became abundantly clear to me that my desire was to use all of the gifts I possessed. And though a career in teaching would check off one of my missions, it did not leave me nearly enough margin in my life to pursue my other callings. It felt similar to the story that Pam Shaw shares, where she was standing in her school one morning and heard God say, "Get out of here." "But Lord, I want to teach," she replied. "Oh, you'll teach," he answered. "But you have to get out of here first." March became the point of no return. I graduated in May, so the time was quickly approaching when I had to either look for a teaching job for the fall or launch Mary Kay full-time to make a living. I decided to try the non-traditional route and lean into Mary Kay. Instead of working full-time as a teacher and having Mary Kay pay for the fun extras in life, I decided, why not have Mary Kay pay for my bills and make teaching the part-time gig? I could make way more as a beauty consultant than a teacher anyway, so that answered my frustrations as a Home Depot employee and a broke nanny that brought me to Mary Kay in the first place. Up until this moment, though I had always seen Mary Kay's potential for full-time income, I had only really pursued it at a hobby level. And here's where I'm going to admit something to you. This stays in this room. Pam Shaw will never hear about this. I don't really work my business super consistently. I think I've done 30 faces in 30 days, maybe twice in my 2 years. So that would be a reason for my disqualification as a DIQ. But I took it as a sign that this was where God wanted me to be. How else could I have gotten as far as I did? But now it was time to switch my mindset from a hobby consultant to a professional consultant. And that's where Pam Shaw does have the wisdom there. You do need to work your business consistently. So don't run out of the room thinking I said otherwise. I'm working on it. We're growing a lot this month. So for the last bit of March, I booked and filled up 1 week with facials and the next with career chats. The last week of March, I was on spring break in Virginia, hence the poison ivy, and DIQ came together while I was in the basement of my cousin's house. While everyone was upstairs, the kids were running around, they were having a good time. I was downstairs praying and calling and praying some more. I mostly got no's from the people I called, but unlike my time in December, I didn't see the no's as defeat. They were just signs that I had not found the right people yet. And even in the no's, I had some of the most encouraging conversations where people said, "I'm so flattered you called me. I'm so grateful you called me. It's so good to hear from you." So even the no's have purpose as well. It came down to the very last hour of March 31st. And by now, after listening to me talk for the last few minutes, you would not be surprised when I say that it was God who made it happen. In obedience, I called and shared and asked, but what got me into DIQ was actually the contributions of 2 longtime consultants of mine who had not placed orders in a while and who I didn't think would. I had moved on from them, thinking the answers came elsewhere, but God had not. Because of them, I now stand before you as a grateful, humbled Director-in-Qualification. Yeah. You can clap for me now. I love that inside joke. It's going to last forever. There's so many uses for it. When you are faithful in the little things, when you are obedient to God's voice, when you are submissive to His will, you are in a perfect place for God to surprise and for God to delight you. It is never the way that you expect, but there is no telling what riches can come from the hands of a king.